Hi, I'm Jerry Smith, Broome County historian, and for the next few minutes I would like to take you on a video postcard of the Binghamton and Broome County area, an area at the confluence. The confluence. Webster's dictionary defines it as a coming or flowing together, a meeting or gathering at one point, usually of two or more streams. Here, where the Susquehanna River meets the Shenango, is our confluence, a confluence of not only bodies of water, but of cultures from many lands, of rural and urban, and of past and present. Along these rivers, where once a young Indian hunted and gathered food for his people, now stand hamlets, villages, and a city. Over 250,000 people now live in the Broome County area, with nearly half of that population in and around the Triple Cities, Binghamton, Johnson City, and Endicott. In the nearly 200 years that people have been settling this valley and the hills that surround it, thousands of immigrants from many lands have arrived via river, turnpike, canal, and railroad. In recent decades, visitors and new residents arrive using one of the major interstates that encircle this area like a ribbon of concrete. The roots and clover leaves of Interstates 81, 17, and 88 are now a familiar sight to the inhabitants of our valley. Other newcomers may arrive using one of the airports that service this region. The largest of these is the Edwin A. Link Field, located on Mount Ettrick since the mid-1950s. Named in honor of one of the aviation industry's leading pioneers, local resident, and developer of the flight simulator, its facilities handle thousands of flights each year. For the aficionado of the smaller plane and the glider, there is the Tri-Cities Airport in the town of Union, which has been in operation since 1936. Binghamton is the largest of the municipalities in Broome County. The city is named in honor of William Bingham, a Philadelphia banker and land speculator who owned the land patent on which Binghamton was developed. Incorporated as a village in 1834 and a city in 1867, the area grew from a frontier town to a modern urban environment. The region developed from the strengths of its industries: lumbering, tanning, cigar manufacturing, patent medicine, shoe manufacture, business machines, and computers. The architecture of the area represents the change from the old to the new. Like many cities in the 1960s, Binghamton's appearance underwent drastic changes under the Urban Renewal Program. And despite periods when block after block of the city were now vacant of any buildings, there has been a revival in new construction, as well as a rise in the preservation of the area's historic structures. The traditional focal point for any area is its courthouse, representing law, justice, government, and stability in the midst of change. The Broome County Courthouse fulfills all those responsibilities. Built in 1897 and designed by well-known local architect Isaac Perry, it is our fourth courthouse on the public square donated by William Bingham. It sits in the upper end of the downtown historic district, surrounded by beautiful and graceful structures built when Binghamton was truly the parlor city. For over 60 years, the 12 stories of the press building represented the tallest structure in the area. Built in 1904 to house the operations of the Binghamton Press Company, its elegant early skyscraper appearance still holds a prominent place in the city's skyline, despite the removal of the newspaper's offices in the 1960s. In the same year the press building was constructed, the the city also saw the rise of the nearby Security Mutual building. Designed by the same architects, its ornate architecture houses an insurance company and a number of offices and businesses. In 1903, construction began on the Binghamton Public Library, a gift to the residents of the city by Andrew Carnegie. A year later, the building opened and has served the community ever since. It has been the Broome County Public Library since 1985, serving a 4-county area as a central reference source, operating 5 branch libraries and circulating over 500,000 items each year. In the 1960s, efforts began to consolidate some of the many governmental offices spread throughout the region. Ground was broken for the Government Plaza on a 2-block area in Binghamton, near the courthouse that would house the offices of the governments of Binghamton, Broome County, and the local offices for New York State. In February 1981, a fire in the transformer of the State Office building sent deadly PCBs and dioxins throughout the 18 stories of that structure. The problem forced governmental bodies and citizens to work together to develop a cleanup procedure for the building. The first post office in the area opened in 1795. Since that time, many buildings have been used to deliver the letters and packages that are an important part of our lives. The current post office has been used since 1968, while its predecessor, constructed in 1934 and adorned with lovely murals painted as part of the WPA program, is now the Federal Building and Courthouse. The rise in historic preservation during the 1970s aided in the restoration and reuse of a number of area buildings. In Binghamton, the old City Hall on Collier Street closed when the Government Plaza opened, but it has been restored to its 1897 grandeur and readapted to become the Best Western's Hotel de Ville. The Boston store opened in Binghamton in 1899. It later changed its name to Fowler, Dick & Walker and was the area's largest department store for 90 years. The store's facade was renovated in the 1970s and the business closed in 1981. 3 years later, it reopened as Boscov's department store. Built around other historic structures, such as Tiffany's Bank Cafe and the former First City National Bank building, is Metro Center, which opened in 1984. This new center for retail and food stores represents another part of the revitalization of the downtown Binghamton area. Culture and philanthropy have always played an important role in the development of the greater Binghamton area. Reusing the old Binghamton Theater, once a vaudeville and movie theater, the creation of the Broome County Center for the Performing Arts, better known to local citizens as the Forum, has created a home for the nationally renowned Tri-Cities Opera, Binghamton Symphony, and BC Pops, as well as providing for plays, concerts, and other performances. As a memorial to the veterans who served and died during the Second World War and the Korean War, a civic auditorium, the Broome County Veterans Memorial Arena, was built in the 1970s. It adjoins the Government and Marie Midland plazas and is a center for concerts, the local professional hockey team, circuses, trade shows, festivals, and high school and college graduations. Downtown Binghamton is a location for both the YMCA in its new building and the YWCA in a readapted hotel building. Both of these institutions have served the community for over a century, providing shelter for the needy, clothing and food programs, and daycare programs for countless thousands of residents and newcomers to the area. In 1858, under the tutorage of Dr. Frederick Turner of New York City, the New York State Inebriate Asylum opened on a hill overlooking Binghamton's east side. It was the first institution in the country to treat alcoholism as an illness. After problems with management, the facility was converted to the Binghamton Asylum for the Chronically Insane. Today, it is the Binghamton Psychiatric Center, with the castle, the original building of the center, still standing on the grounds. In 1875, Erastus Ross donated 90 acres of land on the south side of Binghamton for a public park. Within a year, the park was in operation and shortly after its opening, a zoo was added to the site. One of the first 10 zoos in the country, Ross Park Zoo is today operated by the Southern Tier Zoological Society and one of the most popular attractions in the region. Now part of the Ross Park area, the Discovery Center represents the best and brightest in the education of young children. Begun in the 1970s in a small space in an old school, the center has continued to grow in size and popularity, bringing major exhibits and hands-on experiences to the youth of the region. In the 1950s, the turn-of-the-century mansion of local lumber merchant Alonzo Robertson and his wife was converted into a museum and center for the arts, history, and science. The Robertson Center for the Arts and Sciences continues to operate nearly 40 years later, with exhibits, the Link Planetarium, the Broome County Historical Society, and local dance groups and classes as part of its success. The railroads have always played an important part of this community's history. They helped to transform the area from a small village to a modern city, and aided in the growth of Johnson City, Endicott, and other areas. Thousands of immigrants arrived via railroads like the Delaware and Hudson and the Erie to seek new opportunities in this valley. Many of them came through the Lackawanna Station in Binghamton. Built in the early 1900s, it represented the focus of the massive railroad yards that surround it. In the early 1980s, the station, run down and rapidly deteriorating, was renovated into retail and office space. In the last 2 decades, more and more antique stores have begun to locate along one stretch of roadway called Clinton Street in Binghamton's First Ward. Today, there are over 40 used furniture and antique stores in operation along this street, nicknamed Antiques Row. Thousands of students attend public schools in Binghamton each year. Elementary schools like MacArthur School on the south side of the city offer more than just education. This school is also part of a larger park complex and houses a branch of the public library. As they complete their secondary education, students attend the newly enlarged and renovated Binghamton High School on Main Street, which represents an excellent mix of the old and the new architecture of the city. Bridges have always played an important role in this community, connecting one section with another over the rivers and valleys that separate them. In Binghamton, the Washington Street Bridge awaits renovation and reuse. It is one of the few triple parabolic arch bridges left standing in the state. The Memorial Bridge, commemorating the veterans of the First World War, connects downtown with the beautiful estates along Riverside Drive. Court Street Bridge stands on the location of the first bridge constructed in the frontier town and serves to connect Binghamton with its west side and Johnson City. This trip toward the west takes the visitor along Main Street and through one of the 2 arches which were erected in 1920 by the workers of the Endicott Johnson Corporation to honor its president, George F. Johnson. Passing through this arch, or its mate in Endicott, now takes us into the square deal towns. Johnson City is the second link of the Triple Cities. Originally called Leicestershire, it was started by the Lester Brothers Boot and Shoe Company, who had hoped to create a model company town around their business. They ran into hard times and sold the firm to Henry B. Endicott of New England, a prominent shoe manufacturer. He kept on the company's supervisor, George F. Johnson, and later made him a partner. The Endicott Johnson Corporation became the area's second major industry after cigar manufacturing. At one time, the firm would employ over 18,000 people in the manufacture of 52 million pairs of shoes each year. The success of the company arose over their square deal policy, giving the employees good wages, benefit packages, free medical care, and low-cost employee-owned housing. Much of the architecture of Johnson City represents the functions and needs of the company. Main Street in Johnson City developed largely between 1880 and 1920, and remarkably retains much of its original character today, with a number of small retail shops and the traditional five-and-dime store, McCrory's. During the decades of the 1930s and 40s, hundreds of people could hear the strains of Benny Goodman's orchestra playing Let's Dance in the George F. Pavilion at CFJ Park in Johnson City, which provided the opportunity for residents to hear the sounds of the big bands. The gift of the Johnson family, today it is called Fountains Pavilion after being purchased by a local restaurant and is still in use. One of the major problems of the modern world is traffic. One of the famous solutions in this area has been the Johnson City Traffic Circle, which funnels traffic from Vestal, Binghamton, and Endicott. Traveling on the circle can be an experience that few should miss if you like excitement. The expansion of Johnson City occurred in the late 1960s when Interstate 17 went through what had been a residential and suburban area known as Oakdale. Within a few years, the region had transformed into a giant retail and business area with the development of the Oakdale Mall, an indoor shopping complex of over 100 stores. A number of other shopping areas were created in the same area, and the retail outlook of the entire region was forever changed. Our trip now continues into the last of the Triple Cities, the village of Endicott. The village is a true example of a planned community, with the industrial area in the northern part of the town, the retail market in the center, and residential areas on either side of it. Endicott was incorporated in 1905 and thrived on the success of its major industries, Endicott Johnson and IBM. Most of the factories were centered around North Street, where they still operate today. Washington Avenue continues to be the main retail area for the town, with its small stores, banks, restaurants, and Burt's, the last of the family-owned department stores in our area. One of the many gifts that George F. Johnson gave to this community was Ideal Library in Endicott. Like his other library, Your Home Library in Johnson City, it was meant to be a focus for community activities and education. In the late 1960s, Endicott built a new library on the site of the original building, which had been George F.'s home, and the new building was renamed the George F. Johnson Memorial Library. The shape of things to come could be seen in the design for the new municipal building constructed in 1960 in Endicott, replacing the older buildings which were viewed as outdated and helping to create an atmosphere of modern urban life. New retail markets sprang up with the creation of the Endicott Plaza in the 1960s, while nearby, a touch of the traditional remains with Pat Mitchell's Ice Cream, which has been in business for over 50 years. Round Top was once the site of a local Indian habitation during the period preceding the arrival of the white man, but today that area is the site of a beautiful county park. Once the site of Casino Park, later called Ideal and Enjoy Parks, is the Union Endicott High School. In this renovated and enlarged structure, students now play on the field where horses once raced and strollers took leisurely walks along the Susquehanna River. To the west of that school is now Griffin Park, offering playing fields, pavilions, and enjoyment to the residents of western Broome County. The second of the Endicott-Johnson arches marks the original separation of Endicott and the old village of Union. The older village, which marked the union of the armies of Generals Clinton and Sullivan during the American Revolution, has since been annexed to the village of Endicott. Today, the Union Business District of Endicott continues to thrive and grow, adding to the strength of the Endicott area. The Cider Mill Playhouse, located in the Union area, is a unique combination of a working cider mill and an excellent theater facility for small productions of plays and musicals. Begun as an affiliated group of the SUNY Binghamton Theater Department, it continues to prosper and grow. Across the Susquehanna River from Endicott is Vestal, an area which was once described as a bedroom community of farms, small businesses, and homes. Since 1950, that entire region has changed dramatically, particularly after the arrival of Harper College in the early 1960s. Once called Triple Cities College, it was renamed in 1965 to honor Robert Harper, a prominent early landowner and educator. The college soon became part of the State University of New York system, and was later made one of the 4 university centers in the state. Today, over 12,000 people attend classes at the facility. Like the other areas in the county, Vestal was not without its retail centers. In the 1960s, the Vestal Plaza was constructed along the new Vestal Parkway. Along with the university, it aided in bringing in more residents and money into the region. The Vestal Parkway was constructed in the 1960s to ease the traffic flow along the Susquehanna River. It followed the old Shenango Canal extension, which had been started in the late 1860s to save the Shenango Canal. The effort failed, and the bed of the extension lay dormant until a new parkway was planned. Thousands of cars now pass over this former transportation method each day. Many of Vestal's residents live in the area known as Five Corners, the original settlement around Vestal, where businesses, the Vestal Museum, the Vestal Public Library, and the Vestal High School are located. Further down the parkway, visitors will see the elegant architecture of the Vestal Town Hall, which was built in the 1960s, but matches the period of architecture around the region. High above the Five Corners is the Copernic Observatory, which is operated by the Robertson Center and was created through funds collected by the Copernic Society. The only such observatory in this part of the country, it offers programs and opportunities for children of all ages to go where no man has gone before. The saying that no man is an island is not quite true when you see Murphy's Island. Located in Vestal in the Susquehanna River, it is the home of Bob Murphy, local businessman, whose unique site for his home makes for interesting conversation. The business structure of the area is the true strength of the region. The variety and number of businesses help to stave off the worst of the Great Depression and allow for the transformation from smokestack to high-tech industries. While Endicott Johnson was this area's first giant industry, it was not its last. In 1889, a small company called Bundy Time Recording began in Binghamton. Within a few years, it had grown and merged with several other firms in the Northeast to form the International Time Recording and Tabulating Company. In 1905, they moved to the new village of Endicott. In 1914, they brought in Thomas J. Watson to head the firm. Under his leadership, the firm grew, and in 1924, he changed the name of the firm to International Business Machines, IBM. IBM is today the area's leading employer. With major plants in Endicott and Glendale, it continues to thrive and change, now making the computers that take men to the far reaches of outer space. General Electric has been a part of this community for over 40 years, with its plant in the Westover area of Johnson City. Like IBM, General Electric is very much involved in manufacture of systems used for the defense of the country. The continued economic stability of any area relies on the growth of new businesses. In the 1960s, the Kirkwood Industrial Park area, with industries such as Lynx Flight Simulator Division, helped to spur the growth of the county's economic base. In the late 1980s, construction began on a new industrial area called Broome Corporate Park. In only a few years, the park, located in the town of Conklin, is already taking shape, and more firms are committing to relocating or moving into the region. One of the major factors in attracting those new businesses is Broome Community College, located in the town of Dickinson. Created in 1947, only 1 year after Triple Cities College had begun, it offered courses to the returning veteran, but with a primary interest in technical material. Today, the school offers liberal arts and technical courses, is part of the state university system, and has over 7,000 full and part-time students. The area is blessed with an excellent health care system. Binghamton General Hospital was the first such institution in the vicinity, but was quickly followed by Wilson Memorial Hospital, the gift of George F. Johnson. The last of the links in our current system is Lourdes Hospital, affiliated with the Roman Catholic Church. In the 1970s, United Health Systems took over the operations of Binghamton General and Wilson Hospitals, and has currently transformed the former Ideal Hospital into a long-term care facility for the elderly. UHS now offers a heart surgery center, treatment facilities, and a number of other programs for local residents. This area has had a long history of religion. The earliest church dates back to the late 1700s, while the oldest existing church building is Christ Church, which was constructed in 1854. It was designed by Richard Upjohn, and its steeple was not completed until 1903. In 1838, St. John's Catholic Church opened on Leroy Street. In 1873, the present church was constructed and renamed St. Patrick's Church. The first Congregational Church was constructed in 1863 on the site of Peterson's Tavern, the Village of Binghamton government's first meeting place. As thousands of immigrants from Eastern Europe and Russia relocated into the Triple Cities area to work in the cigar and shoe factories, they also built places of worship. These churches, located in the First Ward area of Binghamton and Johnson City, are distinctive for their architecture and gold domes. The former home of Willis Sharp Kilmer, owner of the Binghamton Press Company, Dr. Kilmer's patent medicine firm, and the 1918 Kentucky Derby winner Exterminator, is now the home of Temple Concord, one of several Jewish synagogues that are an integral part of the community. George F. Johnson believed in the freedom of people to worship as they believed, and throughout his later life he gave parcels of land in Johnson City and Endicott to be used for the construction of churches, regardless of religion. Many of these churches still operate from that same location today, over a half-century later. During the last 100 years, thousands of people toiled in the factories in this area, making a variety of products. In order to relieve the tensions of this type of work, the employees needed places where they could relax and enjoy the outdoors. And gradually, an excellent system of parks and recreation facilities was developed. From the state to the smallest village, the local governments have recognized their role in the creation and maintenance of these parks. The Shenango Valley State Park was created as part of the Civilian Conservation Corps during the New Deal program of FDR. Today, families enjoy the beautiful pavilions and eating area, while children can go swimming in Lily Lake. Broome County's park system includes Dorchester Park, built around the Whitney Point Reservoir, Nathaniel Cole Park, and Finch Hollow Conservation Center, where education in our wildlife and natural environment is stressed. It also includes Otsiningo Park, which borders the Shenango River and Interstate 81. Named in honor of the Indian village which once stood on that site, the park is now the home of the annual Speedy Fest and Balloon Rally, where dozens of hot air balloons lifting off provides a spectacular sight for the crowds of over 20,000 people who attend. Binghamton has its own system of parks, including Recreation Park on the west side of the city. Donated by George F. Johnson, it provides swimming, tennis, and other facilities in the heart of the city. Recreation Park is also the home to one of the 6 carousels that have provided uninterrupted fun for the entire family for 70 years in the community. The familiar sound of the calliope used to be heard in countless parks across the nation, but today there are less than 80 operating carousels in the United States. All 6 of our carousels were donated by George F. Johnson and his family. As a youth, George F. was poor and could not afford to ride the carousel in his hometown, and he swore that if he ever were rich, he would make sure that every child could ride for free. His gift of the carousels came with just that stipulation, assuring that our carousels be forever free. These carousels are located in parks across the area, in Recreation Park and Ross Park in Binghamton, CFJ Park in Johnson City, and Highland Park, West Endicott Park, and George W. Johnson Park in the Endicott vicinity. No other area of the country has this many carousels per person, or can offer free rides to anyone who wants them. As part of the Susquehanna Urban Cultural Park, a new carousel museum has opened in Ross Park to mark tribute to the gift of a lifetime. For the golfing fan, the region has many fine courses on which to play. For example, Ely Park in Binghamton sports the municipal golf course, while the larger of the local manufacturing firms, IBM and Endicott Johnson, each developed their own courses. At Enjoy Golf Course, the public course created by Endicott Johnson, The BC Open, a PGA event since the mid-1970s, is played to thousands of eager watchers of the game of the Scots. We live in a region that has seen the arrival of the canal, the railroad, the automobile, and the airplane. Our industries now produce the computer chips and aeronautical devices that will take man to the stars. Thousands of immigrants came to this small valley, nestled along the banks of the Shenango and Susquehanna rivers, to live and work. Their diverse ethnic heritages have not been lost in some vague attempt to make them American, but are proudly maintained and preserved as a vital link to our past. The richness of our land is enriched by the richness of our people. At the confluence of our two rivers, the valley that we live in has truly become a valley of opportunity.